real business owners.
Welcome back to the Real Business Owners Podcast. This is episode 57 with myself, Trevor Cowley, and my partner, Kale Goodman.
What's up?
Guys, we want to talk about a topic that, obviously is plaguing the world. It's a difficult topic to speak on because some people might be offended by it or think that we're calling them out. But you guys need to realize that we're not doing any of that out of a place of hatred or anything like that. Obviously, we want to, empower you. And in some cases, people might fall under this category without even really realizing it.
What we all do at some point.
We all
at some
do.
level.
Everybody's guilty of it to some extent or another in certain circumstances.
Yeah.
Some people utilize it in every circumstance. Some people use one circumstance and they, could never get over that one circumstance, right? And the topic that we're going to talk about today is victim mentality. That's not going to do anybody any good. It does. If you are a victim to a scenario and you continue to play that on repeat over and over and over, it can't feel good because you're flat out just telling yourself subconsciously that you're powerless.
Yeah.
Right? When you have that type of mentality. And so when you have a victim mentality, you can feel hopeless, you could feel depressed, you feel like that you don't have any control because things are happening to you all the time. I just can't catch a break. Mm-hmm. This is happening, well, maybe some of those things are happening to try to redirect you and you're just not listening to, the things that are happening that's trying to redirect you down a path that you should go down, that you're not ultimately going down. So victim mentalities is I think, plaguing the world. It's easy to do. It's
easy to buy into.
Well,
when shit's going on around you.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That is making things a little more challenging. It's pretty easy to just buy into it and be like, oh man, I'm going to have to suffer financially right now because coronavirus.
Yeah. I'm a victim of a victim of coronavirus. I'm out of work. I'm this, I'm that because of the. And again, you say because of boom, and then you place something there, coronavirus, because of that, meaning, in other words, you're letting yourself off the hook. You have no control. Therefore, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to put in any extra work or anything of that nature because you're already a victim of that circumstance or that scenario. So therefore, again, it just lets you off the hook from actually having to do more work.
Yeah.
Which is usually the case. Victim mentality is the easy route to go because we can always say, oh, well, because of this, I didn't go to the gym. Or because of this scenario, I didn't start a business. I ended up having a kid.
Yeah.
I couldn't start a business. I couldn't take risks. I now have a family. So now you're a victim of being a family man or a family woman. No, that's not the scenario because there's other people that have had kids and have a family that go on to start a business. But it's much easier to justify your lack of actions to this scenario because it makes you feel it gives you that little bit of feel good that, that's the reason why I'm not where I want to be. When in reality, you chose to utilize that scenario to let yourself off the hook. So therefore, that was a decision. So you're a victim of your choices.
Yeah. And
that's really what it comes down to.
Dude, totally. We were just talking about it before we started actually recording, and it was like, it's like, dude, it's in some people it's programmed so much more into them than others, right? And it always, I don't know about always, but a lot of times it stems from their childhood. I can think of so many stories, and we were talking about it right before we started, how every family, that you know from growing up with, there's always like the one that's just stuck in being the victim. There's always the one sibling that goes off and becomes like, successful and, thrives and like, what is the difference, right? Like, what is, that is creating that pattern, right? Because nobody has a perfect childhood, but like in my family growing up, I've had to tell my sisters, my brothers so many times. I shouldn't say sisters, I only have one
sister.
My sister, my brothers, my siblings, so many times I've had to tell them, like, listen, man, like, you can't blame everything on your upbringing. Like, you're going to continue to stay miserable your entire life. You're not going to succeed at anything until you get over this. You got to quit. You got to reprogram. I've had that talk with them several times, man. And it's like, it is just deeper rooted in some people than others. So how do you know if you are very strongly programmed to be a victim person? Yeah. What is the thoughts running through your head all the time that you need to start listening to identify, yes, I am a victim. I need to quit doing this. I need to reprogram. How do you get to that point of like making a choice to reprogramming so that you don't stay in that victim mentality? It's really hard because so many people do it. We all do it to a certain level. I know people are like, well, dude, I'm probably never gonna be fit or healthy because my parents they're both obese.
Exactly.
I literally have had conversations with people who are obese. They're like, well, this is the way I was brought up.
Well, that's what you've accepted then.
Yeah.
As your reality. Yeah. That's a conscious choice to accept that as your reality. But so let me ask you this. So it's the same type of concept, right? Mm-hmm. So why does one kid or child have an alcoholic parent, and that individual grows up and becomes an alcoholic, and what do they say? They say, man, my dad was an alcoholic. I grew up around this stuff.
Too much genes.
That's all I know. That's all I know. But then you have another person that had an alcoholic parent, and they despise it so much so that they say, I will never, ever drink because I don't even want to be anything like that person. Yeah. So under the exact same scenario, two people decided to go down two different paths. Yeah. Right. And I know somebody that we were looking at people that got arrested recently. Here in Utah, you can actually look at the bookings and see who got arrested, right?
It's probably the most visited website
exactly.
in Utah.
Yeah, they should start selling ads.
But I
on
always see it on people's freaking phones and computers. I'm like,
I hardly look at it. I walk by somebody's desk and they were just looking at it.
They look at it like some people look at it daily, dude.
Oh yeah.
I just want to see if I know anyone that got arrested.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's a whole nother conversation.
Just so you can start texting people, did you see? And then it makes you feel good that that they're doing worse than you are, right? So cool. But anyways, there was an individual in the bookings that had some drug problems, and there was one of our employees that walked by and said, "Oh, I was good friends with that individual growing up, and his dad passed away, and so." I was like, oh, that's sad. That sucks. And he's like, but his brother ended up being very successful. Mm-hmm. So you have one individual that's a victim of a scenario of his dad passing away at a young age, and it's very difficult to call somebody out if they're, again, having addict type behaviors, and then they come out with some terrible story, something that happened to them that's kind of gut-wrenching, where you almost give them a pass. Yeah. And you're like, oh, well, geez, man, that must have been tough. But again, you're giving that individual, that's not helping that individual one bit. Right. Again, they keep reselling the same story to themselves over and over and over on why it's okay to make bad choices because of one bad scenario or circumstance happened in their life. Yeah. Okay? You do not want to fall victim to a circumstance. That was one thing that happened, whether it's somebody broke up with you, whether you got a divorce, whether somebody passed away. Everybody on earth is going to have to deal with some of those difficult issues. 100% of people are going to have somebody that they love pass away. 100% of people are going to see bad things happen or scenarios happen in their life. But it's not about falling victim to that scenario. It's about empowering yourself and asking yourself, what could have I done differently in that scenario? And trying to use every scenario or circumstance as an opportunity to learn, right? So coronavirus, I'm victim to coronavirus. We can use that example again, right? Because I'm in a bad situation. And it's easy to say, well, this happened, that happened, whatever. And then most people will give them a pass. They're like, oh, shit, yeah, that did happen. But, and again, that's a real scenario. But are you then circling back and asking yourself, what could have I done differently to shelter myself from this type of a storm? Right. And if you never go back and ask yourself those questions, when you hit that scenario or circumstance that's tough, then you're going to always have tough situations and circumstances on repeat over and over and over again because you're not learning from the past ones. Yeah. So then it becomes a cycle, and then you continue to make bad choices, and it's easy to make bad choices because you're a victim to this scenario. Right? And so let's be real. If you're a victim to a scenario, that's not an empowering place to be. If you fall victim to something, that ultimately means you're admitting that you have no control over your life. Yeah. Right? Look, we don't have control over 100% of circumstances, but we have a control over 100% of the reaction that we have to the circumstance. You're either going to learn from a circumstance or you're going to fall victim to the circumstance. And there's really not a whole lot of in between there. Right. The problem is most people fall victim to a circumstance, and something that happened in the past, they play on repeat over and over and over. You know?
I think one of the biggest problems, dude, with people that really suffer with being able to realize that they do have this victim mentality and they don't know how to get out of it is they don't realize how powerful it is to really believe that you have the choice. They don't think they have a choice. But like really we have a choice in everything. I know. Every single thing. You know, and it starts with, you know, obviously taking accountability for a lot of things, but like, man, you choose how you think. You choose how you feel.
You choose who you hang out with. You choose the music you listen to. Mm-hmm. You choose whether or not to open a book. You choose whether or not you're listening to a podcast. Yeah. I mean, what is it that you don't choose? You choose
what you believe and what you don't believe. I mean, dude, I was just talking about it with Corey, one of our employees today, and I was like, bro, and he was talking about his upbringing because his mom's really, really sick, dude. Like, doesn't think she's gonna make it much longer, and he's got his siblings that are like, we had a shitty upbringing. I don't want to, come down. And Corey, you live the closest to her, and he was kind of feeling victim to that. Like, well, since I live closer to her, I have to take care of her and all this stuff. And he's like, dude, I just realized that I had to make a choice to think, dude, I get to spend these last moments with mom. Mom did her best to take care of us. Yes, our upbringing wasn't the best. Like, but dude, nobody's as perfect, man. You know what I mean? You talk to anybody about their upbringing and it's like, they can talk about the shit all day long. You know what I mean? Because there's always, dude, so every family, bro. Parents were absent or they were too involved or they weren't involved enough or, some shitty shit happened. Exactly. It all comes down to the parenting. And I was telling him, I was like, man, I really enjoyed a book I read when I was going through my first early stages of going through therapy and redeveloping and reprogramming. And I read a book called The Choice Theory, William Glasser, and it's all about teaching you do have a choice in everything and how to program your mind to understand that you have a choice in everything and all that. So it is a really cool book, dude. That's a really good recommendation I'd make for people that are feeling like, dude, I feel like life just keeps happening to me. I feel like I don't have a choice. I feel like, whatever. I'm just a victim to all these things.
They don't feel like that they're in control of their life. Yeah. And so if we're just being real and raw right now, a lot of people just feel like that they don't have control of their life. Yeah. If we just asked a lot of people, are you happy with where you work, with what you do, with the type of income you make, the friends that you surround you with, the shape that you're in? I mean, it could be a million different things. Yeah. The majority of people will say no. But everybody has 100% control over all of those things. Yeah. But it's much harder to look yourself in the mirror and say, you know what, I need to make some real change. Yeah. Than it is to just say, freak, my boss or my this or my, I can't. Look, I used to work out at night and that wasn't kosher and I was a little bitter about it, with me and my lady. And I ended up starting to just wake up earlier and going to the gym because that was something that was important to me. I could have fell victim to a scenario where, I'm at work all day and then when I come home, I would go to the gym and then it's like, okay, I only get an hour or two with my kids, which isn't good for a relationship, sure. Right? Coming home and then just leaving and being gone again for another hour and a half. So I could have fell victim to that and just stopped working out because it just didn't fit the time that I wanted to do it, or I could make the adjustment and control the scenario if it's important enough to me. It's the same concept of, growing up poor. We grew up poor, right? there's plenty of people that just say, this is the way it is. They've accepted their fate, right? Usually people that have a victim mentality has accepted the way that things are or the way that things are always going to be. And so they just say, well, this is just the way it is. No, it's not the way it is. It's the way that you've made it by lack of effort and lack of choosing to do something different. So I think that's why life is happening, to a lot of people, because they just wake up, they're on autopilot, and they just see what happens. So things will happen. Bad things happen. Yep. That's just life. It's going to happen to everybody. Yep. Are you the individual that's going to fall victim to it and use it as an excuse and as a crutch for not wanting or for not getting more and wanting more out of life? Because it's easy to say, oh, well, I could say I was a drug addict, or I could say I grew up poor. I could say I didn't do good in school, and I can fall victim to those scenarios and say, well, the majority of people that don't do good in school usually don't amount to anything. Yeah. So I can easily just pull back and not be successful, and it's going to be justified because I can say I grew up poor, did terrible in school, and was a drug addict. Nobody's going to expect me to go off and just be very successful because I have what seems to be valid reasons or excuses of why I shouldn't be successful, right? So why do poor people stay poor? The only reason why is because they've accepted their fate. Yeah, they've accepted that. Yeah. Okay, you do not have to be the smartest person in the world. I bet you Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson is richer than the smartest person in the world. Yeah. Right? Jeff Bezos is probably not the smartest person in the world, but he's richer than the smartest person in the world. Right? So you don't have to fall under any specific category like growing up with privilege. You don't have to have that to be successful. If anything, I think growing up... Exactly. I think so. I honestly think that individual has less callous, less grit, less discipline than the individual that had to come from the bottom and fight and claw their way up to even being level with that individual. And once you're level with that individual, the race is over because you now have a specific level of discipline that individual doesn't have, and you should be able to blow them out of the water at that point. Yeah. So again,
there's probably people in the world that is their victimness already.
It's what?
Well, I'm just don't have a very good work ethic because I was too privileged growing up. I had everything handed to me, so
exactly.
I don't really have the ambition that other people have. I've literally heard people in some way kind of talk like that a little bit, where they're like, they don't come right out and say it like that, but that's kind of what they say. Like, oh man, I had everything growing up, so I didn't have to work that hard.
Yeah, it was all handed to me. Yeah. So I honestly think that that's why I'm not motivated, because everything was handed to me.
My damn parents.
Yeah, blame it on them. They're a victim to their parents.
They were too
for trying to give them a good life.
They spoiled me too much.
Some people say they've had the luxury of growing up poor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they utilize it to their advantage instead of disadvantage.
If I could go back right now and I had a choice, like, you can grow up as the doctor's kid up the road that's super privileged and lucky and has it all, or you can choose the route you had. I'd choose the route I had, man.
Amen. I would too. And now as a kid I wouldn't have.
No, yeah.
As a kid I wouldn't have.
You'd be like, damn, dude, he's got that new Haro bike and I'm over here riding my Huffy.
There's always the damn kid in the neighborhood that gets the go-kart for Christmas, or the new bike, or the whatever it is that has all the cool shit. And again,
but if you're an adult, you should be mature enough by now to realize
sometimes starting behind, that is the privilege, because it's going to create a specific level of work ethic that will put you head and shoulders above people when you're talking about the marathon. Yeah.
I mean, you're an adult now. That's what I tell my siblings. Literally, 4 or 5 Christmases ago, I literally sat in my kitchen. My brother came in town from Christmas. My sister came and hung out. And dude, our family had this big falling party. We didn't talk to anybody for years. Yeah. I know you know that because you were around that a little bit. And it's like, I remember sitting there having this conversation with my brother and my sister, and it was really just a bash on our parents' conversation. And I literally told them, you guys are adults now.
Why are you reliving your fucking childhood over and over and over to the point where you're now a victim?
It was perfect because I had just heard Tony Robbins in one of his talks on a clip, say, listen, if you are going to blame your parents for everything, you better be willing to thank them for everything that's good in your life too. And I told him that. I was like, listen, if you guys are going to blame mom and dad for everything, your life's going to stay real shitty. Start focusing on what's good in your life, and you better be willing to thank your mom and dad for that as well, dude. Like, our upbringing wasn't the best. Nobody's is. You guys act like you had it so bad. There's kids in other countries that are literally abused by their parents.
Yeah.
Physically.
Yeah.
Sexually.
Yeah.
We didn't have that growing up. You know what I mean? We didn't get sold off to sex slavery. We didn't get ripped out of the home and sold to a freaking drug lord, community in Africa that, will cut your freaking head off if you don't join. Like, come on, man. It's way worse elsewhere. You guys are America. You have a choice. You get to choose right now if you're going to stay a victim and have a shitty life or work your asses off and create the life that you want. And we didn't talk for a little while after that. That was like
it's one of those. I think we had a podcast about harsh truths.
Yeah.
And sometimes those don't go over well. But it's just the way it is, man. Two people could be under the exact same roof, the exact same scenario growing up, and two people can turn out completely different. The only thing that's different is the individual, not all the circumstances that happened underneath that roof. So I promise you, if you're feeling sorry for yourself, you feel as though that you have no control, you feel depressed, you feel, again, because being a victim, that's not a great place to be for self-worth, right? Because how can you have self-worth or self-esteem if you feel as though that you're just a victim to all of these different scenarios or even a scenario in general? Right? So the first step is, one, understanding that you have far more control than you're giving yourself credit for.
Yeah.
Step number two is whatever that past circumstance or scenario is that you continue to freaking play over and over and over in your head.
Yeah. Think of where you can have some gratitude for it. You know what I mean? Like the shit in your life.
You'd be like, damn, I'm kind of glad that I grew up like that.
No, dude, in my daily gratitudes, I have a lot of thoughts like that. I'm like, man, I'm so glad that this happened to me and shifted me this way. Or I had to go through this and it made me stronger in this area. You know what I mean? Start identifying some gratitude for that shit in your life instead of like staying victim to it. It's like a drug addict to getting clean, bro. You got to admit that you have the problem.
Yeah.
If you're getting triggered by people pointing out that you do have a victim mentality, you probably have one. If you are in some shitty situation, your life's not getting better, you might want to do some self-reflection there.
Yeah.
And start identifying like, dude, where are my excuses? What am I staying victim to? And where can I start working on this? Where can I start having gratitude for it? I think that's really a huge first step, is really finding where you can be grateful for that.
I think so too, because I was talking to somebody and they were asking about how I grew up and, all that. And I said how I grew up. I grew up really poor, whatever. Lights, getting turned off sometimes. Mom crying to the utilities department to try to turn on lights and shit again and all that. Wow, I had no idea. And I was like, well, as a kid, if I ever wanted something, I already knew I couldn't go to my mom and say, hey, I need $20, because we were already struggling enough just to get by.
Yeah.
So that happening empowered me to create a work ethic that if I want something, I don't go ask somebody else to help me out.
It's even more powerful than that, bro. You've shared that message so many times and people can relate to it, and then people get to learn from it and they get moved by your story as well. And so it's like, dude.
Well, he was saying, he's like, well, why do you think that you are the way you are? And I'm like, because nothing was ever handed to me. If I wanted a new bike tire or new handlebars, or if I wanted to, if I needed $10, I would have to go around the neighborhood, knock on doors, and try to kick up a few lawns to mow, or go to the golf course and get golf balls, wash them up, and sell them to the golfers. I empowered myself to the point to where now that I'm older, it's serving me. But I could easily have fell victim to being like, I had to freaking, anything that I got, I had to basically pay for myself. And I had to work. I had to this. We grew up so poor. But you find how it connects to something much greater. The fact is, if I didn't grow up poor and I could easily go ask for $20 and that $20 was in my hand, would I have had the work ethic that I had that got me where I am?
Yeah.
I just don't believe that would have been the case. I probably would have been that kid that fell victim to, parents being rich and getting handed everything and
Right.
end up being lazy.
Right.
The reality of it is something's always there. Why go hunt when the meat's just sitting there? It's much easier just to eat it. And then all of a sudden the meat's not there. You don't know how to fucking hunt. The thing is I had to learn how to hunt as a kid and find my own money. And so now I'm utilizing that as an advantage, not as a disadvantage, right? So we could, again, victim mentality all comes down to your perception. And your perception comes down to what you really want in life.
Right. So
if you
true.
really don't want anything in life, it's so easy just to write off this scenario and say, well, that happened because of this, whatever. It was just not meant to be.
Right.
Or that, whatever. Nothing ever goes my way anyways.
Yeah.
So it's not even worth trying. And so it's easy to chalk it up.
Yeah.
It's very difficult. Look, 63 or 4% of businesses break even or lose money each month. The odds state that it's very dumb to go start a business.
Right.
The fact is if you grow up poor, you did terrible in school, and all of those things, plus the statistic of a lot of businesses that go out of business or fail or break even or never profit, that's an easy thing to fall victim to and say, why would I start a business? The majority of them go out of business anyways. I'm not the smartest person in the whole. Why would I start a business? I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. Why would we start an accounting firm? We're not accountants. That's easy to do that. Nobody's going to blame us for not starting an accounting firm when we're not accountants.
Right.
Or we could say, fuck, we don't really like the industry.
Yeah.
They don't communicate well. They don't give us P&Ls. They don't, why don't we be the change? If you want the change, be the fucking change. The problem with today's society is everybody's looking external to somebody else to be the change, but the change starts with the individual. How can you ask somebody else to change when you haven't even changed yet? It's easy to say, be the change. But the issue is somebody else cannot change somebody else's heart. Right? Legislation, if we're talking about today's current culture and circumstance, we can campaign all we want. We can protest all we want to change legislation and make things equal, and all that wonderful, beautiful stuff that's said. But if somebody has hate in their heart, no matter what the law is or legislation is, that individual's a hateful person and can do hateful things. Right?
So true.
So there's a bad cop, something bad happened in today's society. And because it's magnified, now all of a sudden all cops are bad cops. That's not the truth.
I just had this conversation.
That's not the truth.
These are hard conversations to have.
They're very difficult conversations to have because people, again, want to be a victim of all bad cops.
Right.
Let me ask you this. Aaron Hernandez that played for the Patriots that ended up turning into a murderer and he's in prison and ended up dying in prison after killing 3 or 4 people. Does that make all football players bad football players?
No.
Does that make the Patriots, the whole Patriots team, all bad players or bad people?
That's exactly what solved the conversation I was having at a family reunion, dude, because I've got some family that's pretty left and they think I'm pretty right. And I'm like, dude, I don't really feel like this is a conversation that like anybody's gonna win, because you're not gonna convince me all black people are bad or all black just because I'm white. You're not gonna convince me all cops are bad. I don't think society should be judged by groups, by colors. I think people should be judged by individually.
You cannot.
And that was the one thing that they could not argue.
You cannot make a blanket statement or an umbrella statement.
Right.
Because the fact is, again, we just talked about a dad dying, two boys. One ended up being successful. One ended up being a drug addict. Yeah. Okay. They grew up under the same umbrella, but they chose 2 different paths. Yeah. Okay. That's the sad thing about today is if everybody just looked a little bit more inside and tried to be a little bit more understanding and a little bit, which is, again, I'm trying to be as understanding as I possibly can, but I cannot stand when people group people into and they lump 100% of people under the exact same umbrella. That's making a blanket statement.
Yeah.
There's people out there's cops that save lives every fucking day, and there's bad ones too. There's good accountants, there's bad accountants. There's good football players, there's bad football players. Aaron Hernandez was a bad one.
Right.
Tom Brady seems like a pretty damn good guy. Didn't get anything handed to him because he was a 6th-round draft pick. Wasn't supposed to be nothing, and he could have easily fell victim to the fact that he's a 6th-round draft pick and just played for 4, 5, 6 years, and nobody would have blamed him for it.
Yeah.
He wasn't expected to be one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time.
Yeah.
But he chose to utilize a scenario or circumstance that didn't go in his favor to his advantage and used it as fuel. Are you using your scenarios or your circumstances as an anchor to weigh you down, or are you using your scenario or circumstances as fuel to make sure that you don't end up ever feeling that feeling again, like he was underrated? He remembers that day, he remembers that feeling, and he wants to prove his worth. Right. He doesn't ever want to feel that again. So it's really up to you. You can decide, do you want to continue to feel the way that you feel? Do you want to continue to feel hopeless, depressed, this, that, the other? Look external and blame that, oh, bad this, bad that, bad that. A lot of fingers again fucking pointed.
Right.
But nobody's pointing the finger back at them, at themselves.
It's true.
And saying, what could I do to just be a little bit better? Mm-hmm. Maybe stop sharing fucking negative shit on Facebook, because it seems like 99% of people are loving to do that right now. Maybe that's the little change that you could do.
Yep.
Put out something positive, because a negative doesn't really usually get positive. That's just not how it works.
No. Isn't it crazy how much that shit gets shared, though? You know,
it's always negative shit, dude.
Very little of the positive. You always see people post things like, well, no one's sharing this, you know, like, and it's something positive in the media, but the negative shit gets shared so much. And the problem is,
why though?
What are you buying into? You're putting limitations on yourself, and you're allowing other people to put limitations on you as well if you're buying into this group bullshit. Like, oh, well, I'm a part of this LGBTQ community, so I don't have these rights over here. Why are you identifying with that? I don't give a shit what you choose, who you love, whatever.
Yeah.
But if you're going to put yourself in that community and buy into why you don't get all these great things in your life or these rights, like, dude, you're just putting limitations on yourself, and you're allowing other people to put limitations on you as well. Same thing if you're black now today in America, dude, yeah, black people got robbed. They were oppressed. They are probably getting, they missed out on generational wealth and things like that. I mean, I'm not going to argue that kind of stuff, but you have a choice today to make something great of yourself. Why? Because many, many people of that culture have been doing it, and other people choose not to be. But if you're buying into, well, we're oppressed, so we should be given this or we should be given that or whatever, and I don't want to turn this into a big race thing or a big political thing, because, you know, dude, it's facts. There's successful people that came from nothing, that are black, that are white, that are brown. And if you're buying in to, like, our generations, you know, decades ago were oppressed, and so that's why it's unfair for us today, dude, you're
but
screwed.
How does that help that individual?
It doesn't.
It doesn't empower the individual to be again, a victim of a past circumstance.
Yeah.
Okay. And again, there's still some things that need to be ironed out in terms of that, right? There's probably still plenty of unjust things that happen.
Yeah.
Right? But there's probably unjust things happen to people that are Latino, people that are white, people, and it might happen more in this category, and we could choose to focus on that, which again, it needs attention, but negative attention is not the way to go about it.
It's not, man.
Negative attention is not now, why does negative in the media get fed? Why is that being circulated far more than anything else?
Because it feeds their victim need, bro.
Exactly. Okay? So news knows what people need, and what they need is negativity, and they need a circumstance or a scenario to let themselves off the hook for ever making themselves out of anything. And it feels good to them to be like, yeah.
That's why I'm not getting this.
That is the reason.
That's why I'm not happy.
That. It's so much easier to point and say, that's why. But the problem with that over there, basically you're stating that you have no control in here, in your heart.
Right.
When that's not true.
Yeah.
Everybody has control. And let's be real. Everybody's scenarios of trying to come up in the world and make something of themselves is all going to be different. Do some people start at a lower point than others? Yes. I started at a very low point myself at 23 years old, coming off of heroin.
Absolutely.
Please, $0, nothing.
Yeah.
I had to go into sales, start making money in sales, then save money, then pay off back taxes, court fines, this issue, that issue. But I was addressing the issues, and that is an empowering thing to do. And then at that point, I started making something of myself because I took accountability for my actions. Now, there's bad things. Again, bad things happen to everybody. There's bad circumstances, scenarios that's happened in the past for everybody. Some may be far worse than others. But again, you can fall victim to that past circumstance or scenario, or you can focus on you and controlling what you can control.
Right. Make choices as an individual, not as a group, not what you identify as some sort of group or anything, bro. Race, groups. I don't like them, dude. I don't like labels. It's labeling.
It is
I
labeling.
don't like it.
You're a human being, and you're either a good human or you're a bad human.
Yeah.
And you need to decide that. Either you're a victim mentality human or you're empowerment type personality. That's it. Those are the only two types of humans that exist. Good, bad, people that are victim, people that are empowering themselves based upon their daily choices, their daily decisions. So, again,
it's kind of ironic that the whole point of buying into the whole victim mentality is because it's easier, right? But easier is miserable. Everybody that chooses the opposite road, which is harder, is happier, right? Like the pursuit, the journey of overcoming and working hard and making yourself successful or making yourself a success is harder route, but it's so much more rewarding, fulfilling, and happy. You're a happier person. But the people that choose to be limited, that choose their victim mentality because it's just easier to do, are more miserable. And so that is the power of you guys becoming conscious of where you are a victim and how you can overcome it, is because, it's a harder road, but it's more rewarding, it's more fulfilling, and you will be happier. And you'll be more successful in your business.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. I mean, I think we beat that one up pretty good in terms of that topic,
Yeah, we got into some weird stuff, dude.
It's all good.
I don't like going into some of those topics.
I don't either.
But it is true.
I don't either.
It's just
I don't.
truth,
I don't
man.
either. But somebody's got to start going into it, and somebody's got to start saying, "Stop being a victim of this. You can go down the whole fucking line.
Yeah.
And I can be a victim of a bunch of different scenarios. If I write down everything bad that happened to me, on a piece of paper or circumstances, I can have a list of things that easily could be justifiable on why I shouldn't be successful or why I shouldn't pursue anything further or why I should just be happy with the way things are, and not want something greater. But I would rather not choose to focus on the negative things that have happened in my life and repeat that over and over and over, right?
True.
So some people, like I've talked about this before, people that go to AA and NA, the only reason why I don't like it is because they talk about a past negative scenario so much over and over and over that I feel as though that they're almost, to a certain extent, could be a higher relapse than if you talked about it, coached them through the process of healing, and then let them go. Then let them go so that they can start focusing on positive things rather than, well, I did this, I did that. And again, they're living in this weird negative past circumstance or scenario that used to be their life that's no longer their life, and it's time to move on. Yeah. That's really what it comes down to. And at this point, it's time for you guys to move on from a victim type mentality if you feel like that's you. If you're not in a good financial scenario, you're a victim of your choices.
Yeah.
If you're not in good shape, you're a victim of your choices. If you don't hang out with good people, you're a victim of your choices. I don't know how much more, straightforward it could be. It's really not that difficult. Yeah. You could focus on what you're lacking.
It's just difficult because it's programmed so deep, dude. But the first step is just becoming aware of it, man. Start practicing, start working on it. Start making new choices. Start making, you know what I mean? Have that self-talk, man. Okay, man, I'm not going to buy into this. I'm going to choose to think this. And I'm going to choose to go down this route. Or I'm going to choose to, think positive about this instead of negative about it. It all just comes down to doing that over and over and over again to reprogram.
It takes a while.
Dude, it's programmed deep into people, man.
Oh, yeah.
It is. And I was one of them, dude.
Yeah.
And I still today, I still buy into my own excuses sometimes. I'm just lucky that I'm more aware of it now than I used to be.
You can catch yourself every so often being like, oh, well, fuck. Maybe I shouldn't say that.
Yeah, dude, I've had that conversation. You brought it up. I mean, shit, I've had conversations with myself not even that long ago. I was like, well, man, I can't ever get to the gym when I want to because, you know, my wife is working these hours and I got to be with the kids these hours. But, dude, there's always a way, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to sit here and stay a victim to that bullshit and start blaming whatever, my not being able to get to the gym on someone else, my wife, you know, or my kids. Like, it's like, figure out when you can do it and do it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's harder to get up in the morning, but you'll be happier for it. You'll be more rewarded for it.
Life is so much more sweet when you're accomplishing things and overcoming things. And part of overcoming something is a past negative scenario or circumstance, just as we've talked about. Mm-hmm. You know what that circumstance is for yourself. Me and Kale don't know what that circumstance is for you. Right. Whether somebody left, you know, a boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, you know, somebody, let's say on a first investment, you know, you gave them 20 grand and they took your money. Mm-hmm. You know, and then now you're paralyzed in fear. You're a victim to that circumstance, and that's why you'll never make another investment ever again, because you're holding you keep reselling that one scenario that happened when you invested the 20 grand and it didn't work.
Yep.
So therefore now you're paralyzed in fear, which is a victim.
Yeah.
You're a victim of that. If you're paralyzed, you're a victim of the circumstance. Yeah. You can't act like you want to act, because if we took money out of the equation and if it wasn't a money decision and you just looked at the facts and figures, does it look like a good decision? Yes or no? And if you say yes, then now an emotional trigger happens where you're like, well, I don't want to lose that money.
Right.
I've already done that before. And again, you're falling victim to that past scenario or that circumstance to where you cannot progress anymore financially in this scenario because of that. And you can't, again, it's all good. What did you learn from losing that 20 grand? Maybe you should have asked a few more questions. Maybe you should have done this. Maybe you should have done that. Instead of falling victim to it, empower yourself.
No.
Say, fuck, man, I didn't ask enough questions. I should have done this. I should have done that. And then at that point, you're that much stronger. So you can choose to be weak or you can choose to be strong and empower yourself.
Perfectly
and that's
put, man.
That's really what it comes down to. So
100%.
100%, dog. 100%. 1,000%.
Million percent.
Shit, trillions. Forever percent. So today's review, love the podcast. These guys deliver genuine content every week. They've helped me rethink the way I view my business. Every episode has been solid. Every episode, something solid to take away. That was from KBIHN. Cabin. Appreciate the feedback. And anybody else still listening, make sure that you drop a review for us, if you will. And again, just as always, share with family, friends, somebody that you think could get value out of it. In this case, maybe somebody with a victim mentality.
Right.
Somebody that's maybe you have a family member or friend, and you're starting to out-progress that individual, and they keep talking about maybe some of the old things that you guys used to do together, and they're falling victim to, maybe some of their old past patterns, and you're not. You're empowering yourself. Maybe that's the person that you need to share the episode with. Right. But I guarantee you, text it out to 10 of your friends, and 8 of them could use it.
Or
that's
your siblings if they're blaming all their shit on their upbringing.
Exactly. So we wish you guys well. Hope you guys have a good rest of your week. Take care.
Appreciate it.